Now, please feel free, if you feel comfortable, leaving your wonderful faces on screen. We love that during these sessions, and that's why we host them as Teams meetings rather than webinars. Welcome to the We See You Shine Mixtape series, the first of 3 lunchtime events. This is a really exciting new program that we're doing in conjunction with our MAVlab Awards program. And it's a way of kind of sharing ideas and getting inspiration from past finalists and winners, hearing from our incredible sector partners that are creating these solutions, working with councils across the state. So thank you for joining us. We're running a really exciting format today that we do in MAVlab, something called a series of lightning talks, and we'll get into that in just a second. But today, a reminder that we're talking about our internal systems, our capabilities, our culture, the infrastructure that we're building inside councils to create awesome impact for our communities. And next week, we'll kind of flip and face outside, and we'll look at some kind of programs that support in our community spaces. So I would like to begin by formally acknowledging our traditional owners of the lands that we're tuning in from and joining to have this beautiful discussion today. I'm up in Preston in the city of Darebin, and I'm on Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung country, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing connection to lands, waters and cultures. Now, as well, storytelling is a big part of Aboriginal culture, and that's what we're doing today. We're helping to tell stories of impact and then share those stories. And I just want to take a moment to celebrate the work that they do and the work that inspires us. Please feel free to share where you're tuning in from today, the traditional owners, the lands, whether that's in Victoria or New Zealand, across the world, let us know. Now, before we jump into our amazing lightning talks, I want to take a moment to thank our partners. This awards program that celebrates and acknowledges leadership in our councils across the state would absolutely not be possible without all of these incredible sector partners. So thank you for the work that you do in supporting the MAVlab Innovation Awards. Now, we're going to run through, we've got 5 to 10 minutes per lightning talk. It's very exciting, short, sharp. If you've got any questions, drop them in the chat during. Each of our talkers is going to pass the baton, the relay baton, to the next speaker. And then at the end, we're going to facilitate a Q&A. And all of these presentations are connected into awards that we are celebrating through the program. So to kick us off, I'm going to hand over to Vanessa in just a second. But before I do that, I would like to remind anyone on the screen, if you're thinking about nominating, you still have 2 weeks. This is the QR code to the MAVlab Awards. We would love to hear about the work you're doing and celebrate your stories. So thank you for the service you do to your communities. Vanessa, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let you take the reins, if that sounds okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gemma, and good afternoon, just everyone. Hope you all enjoyed the long weekend. And yeah, really excited to kind of connect with you all and talk today around, I guess, a case study. And we've also got this available on the MAV website, where we were really able to partner with a CEO and a council on increasing diversity across their executive team. For those that don't know me, Vanessa Huxley, I'm one of the senior partners at Davidson. I lead our local government pod and focus within kind of Melbourne and then brought out into Victoria as well. Davidson is a workplace performance business. Hopefully you've all had some kind of exposure to us. I would anticipate potentially, given there's a lot of local government people here over the years. We're a national business, but a significant amount of work within Melbourne, working across the local government landscape, which is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I've only got 2 slides today to talk through, so I won't bore you with too much content, but did want to, I guess, talk through the case study around Greater Dandenong Council. I think it's a really great example of where we were able to partner with a really contemporary and forward-thinking CEO who had that really strong commitment to ensuring that her executive team really reflected the diversity of the Greater Dandenong community. So this is with Jackie Weatherall in 2024, who was appointed in as a CEO the year before. She'd previously been at City of Stonnington and then at Cemeteries Trust, and is certainly known as a really high-performing CEO in the sector. Greater Dandenong is a really interesting council from a landscape perspective. So it is the most culturally diverse within Australia, in Victoria, and one of the most within Australia. It's got about 150 different birthplaces and nearly 2/3 of people born overseas. Along with having such a multicultural community, it's also got some really exciting things happening from an investment attraction and growth perspective. So they are attracting big businesses into the region. They're the fastest growing outside the CBD in terms of larger manufacturing, warehousing. And so the opportunity at Greater Dandenong is a really interesting one because you are balancing the needs of a very diverse community and often people that will need a lot of the services that local government has transitioned out of. If we think about in-home support, Meals on Wheels, childcare, aged care, they're still engaged in a lot of those services. So I guess with that, the complexity of providing services into communities that are more vulnerable cohorts, born overseas, maybe new into Australia, and migrants, along with being able to address what's significant growth and investment from a business and economic development prosperity perspective, was a really interesting one. So within that, really what we talked to Jackie about was how do you build a high-performing team that really reflects the diversity of the community with Greater Dandenong. And it was a great project to work on because Jackie is someone who wouldn't compromise on making sure we really landed that diversity. So we spent a lot of time in market. We had very comprehensive maps. We looked nationally. We looked outside of sector. It was great that she had an appetite for that, along with looking at, candidates that may be sitting in similar positions or aligned positions, but she's got that kind of lateral thinking that we were able to apply through the recruitment process. What we landed on, and I've got the details up there as well, but we did have, a final field and a placement of an executive team that was culturally diverse. We had 2 executives from culturally diverse backgrounds and one who was Iranian heritage, which has been a really great addition into the organisation, given the significant Iranian migrant community there. And in follow-up conversations I've had with Jackie, the perspective that she's been able to bring around some of the complexities and opportunities within the Iranian communities in Dandenong has really had an impact on their ability to engage with those communities. Overall, really great process. We also landed someone who didn't come from the sector, which was great. So had come from more of a commercial background to sit in the COO position and was able to drive some really great efficiencies from a cost and commercial perspective. In terms of how we did it, and I just wanted to, highlight this part around, the opportunity that we have to embed diversity and inclusion across every stage in a recruitment process. And it's something that we get asked about a bit, like how do you ensure that you do that? And it isn't something you can only do in one part of the process. You really need to do it with every step. So this is kind of a really basic kind of workflow for how we work in the exec recruitment world. But really that ability, if you look at the first one around definition, to ensure you're embedding diversity and inclusion is, well, Greater Dandenong's EVP, which I think did strongly align to looking at candidates who were coming from outside of the traditional kind of profiles and looking into those culturally diverse communities. But also, challenging the brief with Jackie and what really are the technical and skills and experience that you need and where's the opportunity to look at, different types of talent. And we know within that, an example is, 2. One is that we know female talent will generally be more hesitant to put themselves forward for a role that may be a step-up position. So how do you proactively target these female candidates and encourage them to consider opportunities and apply? And we also know that having really mandated technical requirements around roles will exclude particular cohorts as well. Another example, does the infrastructure directorate need to have an engineering background? We know that tends to still be a predominantly male field. So what are the opportunities to look outside of that? From a cultural diversity perspective, do they need to have the qualifications that you'd see from someone who'd grown up within the Australian landscape, or are you open to looking for someone who would bring some different skills and experience? So I guess that's kind of the first piece. The engagement, which is really where our work we add value and where our work really begins, which is talking to people in the market, targeting females, targeting people from cultural and diverse backgrounds, linguistically diverse backgrounds, just ensuring small things in terms of gender neutral language in advertisements and making sure that we do attract the broadest talent pools that we can by keeping things as neutral as possible. Through the assessment stage, we always have 2 of our consultants working on these positions, and that's an opportunity for us internally to challenge what our own biases may be, provide different perspectives, and also be targeting different talent. Our interviews and assessments are performance-based, so really relying on data and metrics to try and, again, remove as much bias as possible. Flexible and adaptive interviewing and assessment practices. So obviously diversity beyond gender and culture is also about people who may, have disabilities, who may have vision impairments, who may have hearing impairments. So how do we really allow an interview and assessment process that doesn't disadvantage them if these are some of the challenges that they have? In terms of the selection process, again, that continuing in terms of making sure that the assessment process is fit for purpose for individuals. We facilitate those as well, so help to kind of remove bias in the panels by talking really openly about it, and also challenging different perspectives. And the diversity in panel members is actually a really critical one as well. So whilst not in this process, in other processes where the brief has had a Indigenous lens to it, we've often had an elder join the panels and be part of that process. And what we found is that creates a level of comfort and familiarity for the candidates that may come from an Indigenous background, and enables them to feel comfortable and perform at their best. And then obviously the transition piece is working with Jackie, and in this instance on if there are special requirements that these candidates need, how we support them from an onboarding perspective, noting that people from different cultural backgrounds may have different ways of operating, and how do you really support that and understand that when they're integrating into an organisation. So overall it was a really great process to work on. It was incredibly successful, and it's been great to keep in touch with Jackie over the last couple of years and see the impact that this executive team and the diversity that we're able to secure has been able to have into the council as well. So that's my little presentation. I don't know, Gemma, if we wanted to do questions or not, either way.
I was going to say we could hold them to the end, but if there is a question, it is a nice way of tying it in. I'm just having a look in the chat, and feel free to raise your hand, anyone, if you would like to make a comment at this point, or we can hold to the end. Just having a little scan across. We might let people digest that incredible story, Vanessa, and then maybe they'll come back at the end with some Q&A, if that sounds good.
No, that's great. Thank you, Gemma. And I'll pass over to Amanda Kern from Nillumbik Shire Council.
Thanks, Vanessa, and that's a really interesting and fantastic presentation. So thank you so much for sharing that journey. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm the manager of the Strategic Planning, Transport and Environment team here at Nillumbik, and I'm formerly the manager of the Stat Planning team and Building team at Yarra Ranges. I'm here to share the journey that I took with my lot as we transformed a tough planning journey for our customers. I've been a stat planner for more than 25 years, and the one thing I've learned and thought a lot about is what people's first experience of planning is, and the challenges that can actually bring. For us as planners, the system's familiar. We know it well, but for our residents and even for other people in councils, it's complex and it's a challenging journey to navigate. It can feel complicated, it can feel technical, and it can feel hard to actually get through, and people's journey starts at the beginning. Over the journey and over my years, I've taken countless calls from people who have an idea of what they want to do for a project on their property, an extension, a subdivision, a couple of units, a second dwelling, or even a small business from home. Before they can do anything, though, they need to figure out what rules apply and whether they need a planning permit, and if they do, what information they're going to need to provide to the councils. It's that first interaction that sets the tone for councils as they help their customers navigate that journey, that sets that for the pretty much everything that follows from there. Too often I heard feedback that those early conversations didn't go as well as the customer would like, or even that the planner would like. Planners go straight into their technical language. They talk about clauses, their overlays, the exemptions, all the requirements. And at the same time, the customer's sitting there going, all I want to do is figure out if I need a planning permit to build a deck or something like that. So really challenging. Customer can walk away feeling overwhelmed and really unsure about what happens next. So that journey is where the idea behind my lot began. So at Yarra Ranges, as the manager, I led the inception and came up with the idea, and then we led the design and development of this portal from the council side, and worked in close collaboration with the technical advisors at MAVlab to make sure that the council perspective was really strong in it, and also the customer's perspective was really well heard, to make sure it reflected real planning practice, real customer needs, and our real service challenges. Our goal was really simple: to improve the customer experience right at the front end of the planning journey. We wanted people to be able to explore their ideas in their plain language at their own pace before they even spoke to a planner. It was never about replacing our planners. It was about helping people have a better planning conversation and to get a better outcome. So we started in 2023 when the Victorian Government released a digital transformation grant. We partnered with MAVlab to build an inquiries portal, and that brought together planning knowledge, customer experience, and digital capability. AI at that time, as you may remember, was only literally just beginning its transformation of our landscape, and boy, has it had an impact since then. But the timing was perfect at that time, as we changed completely how we came up with the solution that we have. We worked closely with MAVlab. We built an AI-driven inquiry tool tailored to both the council planning scheme and the property's planning controls itself. We used an online chat to guide people in their conversational language. The chat would ask questions about their project to help identify likely permit triggers and planning controls, and then gave them a written report that they could ponder, they could keep coming back to, and keep evolving. It was that written record that really mattered. The planning advice that people get is often given verbally. People don't remember every detail, and customers need something clear and consistent in writing. And it also meant that council also had a written record of that interaction as well. One of the biggest benefits we've found is the confidence. People can test an idea, understand the issues, and come into the next conversation better prepared, with clearer questions and a better sense of what their process is ahead. And that's good for both their customers, but it's also good for our planners. Instead of spending time answering the early stage questions, the same ones over and over again, the planners can focus on more complex, site-specific work that adds the most value. It also improves the quality of what comes into council in the planning application phase. When people understand what's likely to be required, they can prepare more effectively, which means fewer incomplete inquiries and better applications. What I'm especially proud of is this has been built by local government for local government, and it started with the planners at Yarra Ranges figuring out what the problems were and the barriers were to our customers, and trying to devise a solution that worked for everyone. Since we started, it's expanded to about 12 different councils across the nation, not just in Victoria, which is something incredible for our sector. The portal's scalable, it's practical, and it's designed to support our whole sector, not just one council. The next stage that MAVlab are looking at is expanding it into lodgement checklist, assessment checklists, and then the AI can actually go into devising whether or not there's inconsistencies in plans, whether there's missing information, and it can support the assessment workflow, which, as we know in planning for us, is they're getting tighter and tighter and harder to navigate. So for me, the value wasn't just the technology for its own sake. It's what makes the solution possible. It helps our customers be more confident and informed. It helps our councils and our planners provide a more transparent and consistent service. And it helps our planners spend more time where they add the most value. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve with MAVlab. It's a practical response to a real challenge in our planning service. And it's a strong example of how AI can better support our public services more generally when you have the appetite to actually explore it. We started with the simple question of how do we make the start of the planning journey easier for people? And I believe this work is an important step towards answering that question. I'm proud of the Yarra Ranges team and all of the councils that have come on board, proud of the teams and the people and the customers who have been involved in the journey. And I'm pretty confident this approach can transform how we use AI to support our services, but not replace our people. Thank you, everybody. Happy to take questions at the end, and I'll hand over to Cassandra and Penny.
Thanks, Amanda. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Penny Barnes. I'm the coordinator of immunisation, maternal and child health at the City of Maribyrnong, and my co-presenter is...
Hi, I'm Cassandra Connolly and I'm the Best Start Facilitator at Brimbank City Council.
So thanks everyone for giving us this opportunity to present to you. This was an idea that we had thought about around COVID time, of course, and it had to be put on hold and really started to come to fruition in 2024 and then I guess to its infancy in 2025. It was really important to us that we build trust through engagement. We had a working group, and this was predominantly Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander organisations and council staff who gave First Nations perspective and oversight from traditional owners. We are really aware that this is not the first time a Welcome Baby to Country event has been put on by a council, but this is the first one where we have done it in collaboration with two inner city councils. And then as you can see from the numbers there on the screen, we had an amazing event, well attended, and lots of beautiful families welcome to country.
So our goal was to strengthen culture and community connection as well as access to support services for this event, but the traditional owners had always had the final say in the event's delivery. We started off by taking an expression of interest to gauge the interest of the community, and we worked with them to ensure that access to the event via transport and other support mechanisms was in place. We also worked with organisations that already knew the family to offer additional assistance so they felt culturally safe via already established relationships. A venue was chosen that was already familiar with Aboriginal community members, and all the vendors that we hired to facilitate the evening were First Nations companies, including caterers, printers, photographers, artists, and more. Local respected elders were also given roles by the traditional owner to be part of the ceremony, and that spoke at length to the connection that they had with families.
So we really wanted to prioritise relationships before outcomes, and we also wanted a service to delivery to be moving towards genuine partnerships. So the working group that was established around about 10 months before we actually delivered this event, we have ongoing connections to organisations and families, and these ongoing connections are through playgroups, maternal and child health, education and cultural opportunities. For some families, this was their first opportunity and a starting point in their journey, in their cultural journey, into learning about their own history and to connect with local mob. We had a few families whose children were identified as Aboriginal, but one parent wasn't Aboriginal. So it was a great step for them in feeling really culturally safe to attend a ceremony. We also didn't want this to be a one-off event. We actually wanted to organise additional follow-up sessions with families, and this is in the form of returning to a morning tea, pop-up play groups, and also learning to burn their stories on children's new possum skins that they received during the ceremony, which was pretty special.
So our result was all about working towards better outcomes for the community through cultural connections. We've seen some of those things coming around in higher numbers of families up to date in their key age and stage visits with maternal child health here at Brimbank. And over at Maribyrnong, more families have been willing to identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander at council services. The increase has been 20% of new identifying families over the past 12 months.
So I guess one of the key lessons for us is that you really need to invest in relationships first and most importantly. And I guess consider that communities don't see the boundaries that we as local governments do. And I guess that, it doesn't need to stop a ceremony, and there are opportunities for ongoing connections, and this could be done with, any adjoining councils, particularly if your Aboriginal numbers are on the lower side. Consider, as we have done, to merge with another council.
So I think our message is really when culture leads, connection follows, and that services become more effective. Councils don't need to lead, but need to be a conduit of support for community organisations to keep those connections strong.
So thanks so much for listening. Both Cass and I will be around if you would like to reach out for some further information. We've also included Sharon Sparks on our slide there, who's taken over from Georgia Jacobson, who was involved in this project. So thanks for your time and listening today.
Thank you. And we'll pass over to Tegan Harris from Mitchell's Shire Council.
Thanks, Penny and Cass. That was a great presentation. Hi everyone, I'm Tegan. I'm the Community Development Coordinator for Mitchell Shire Council. I've also got Adele Mufsid, our Gender Equality Officer, who's online with us today. So thanks for being here, Adele. I just wanted to also pay our respects to our TOs. So we do sit across Taungurung and Wurundjeri Wurrung. I'm currently working on Taungurung lands today. I'm in Kilmore, so I just want to pay our respect to their rich cultures and to their elders, past, present and emerging, and anyone else who might also be from Mob or First Nations heritage on the call today. So I'll be taking you through a very quick overview of our Gender Impact Assessment app. It will be very quick because I'm conscious to stick to 5 minutes, and I'll also be sharing a bit of a case study on how we have used the app. So Mitchell Shire, who are we? Where are we located? We're about 40 k's north of Melbourne. We're one of the fastest growing councils in Victoria. Our current population is actually 69,600 now. So that's our 2026 data. By 2046, we'll have climbed up to 221,000. So that's a lot of new families and a lot of new babies being born. We have about 74 babies a week being born here in Mitchell Shire. We are also a diverse community, so we have about 40 townships and communities in Mitchell Shire. We're an interface council, so we cross over both rural and residential areas as well. And we have 3 languages that are most commonly spoken in Mitchell, so that's English, Punjabi, Italian, and an extension of Punjabi is Hindi as well. So what is the Gender Impact Assessment app? We'd all be aware that gender impact assessments are now a key requirement under the Gender Equality Act in 2020, and they must be applied to new or under review policies, services and programs. So we essentially created the Gender Impact Assessment app using 4 overarching principles, which are on the screen. So this is really what kind of drove us to create the app. Obviously, it became mandatory and legislated for councils to have a process in place where they could measure the impact and be able to apply a gender lens on programs and services. So this is our app. If I was tech savvy, I'd have a full demonstration for you today, but I am not. But basically, our app is an internal app used by Mitchell Shire staff, and it provides a really step-by-step process for staff to undertake when they do have a new program or service that's coming online. Ideally, they would do it at the start of their project, so from project conception stage, and it does allow them to be able to apply a gender lens. There are some intersectional questions in there as well. So, I think Amanda spoke earlier around the intersections around disability, culture, connection, and how all of that can have an impact on programs and services. So it's not really just gender, but we called it the Gender Impact Assessment app anyway. So what have we done? We've got a series of help sheets that have videos, case studies and resource links for staff to be able to use. We've also got some search icons that are embedded in the app, and there's like a bit of an asterisk box as well, which gives some prompter questions for any staff who are really unsure. We've also done a series of leadership trainings at Mitchell. So we've had 58 leaders, so from the CEO all the way down to officer level, go through gender equality training and get a bit of a how-to on how to use the app as well. So what were some of the benefits of creating the app? Well, I think for us and for any entity, not just local governments who need to complete gender impact assessments, there wasn't really a streamlined process or a way that we could collaboratively report internally. So I guess by having a central app, that houses all the information, we were able to draw on that data really quickly and really effectively for council briefings or any strategy sessions as well. The app itself is powered through Power Apps. So I guess just wanting to make that point because it doesn't need any super fancy tech to be able to use it. If you're not tech savvy like myself, this is very important. But I guess what it's also been able to allow us to do is, many entities, not just local government, use Power Apps. So we've been able to share the app quite easily with a range of different other providers. So we recently did a GIA on our electronic gaming machines policy. So this is actually the first one of these that we've done here at Mitchell Shire. And basically what it allowed us to do was provide a gender lens to our approach when it comes to mitigating the harms of gambling in our community. So we basically stepped through the process using the app. There was a number of gendered considerations that came out once we had started answering all the questions and inputting the data. And essentially what we saw from this process was while both men and women experience the effects of gambling, I think as we all know, men continue actually to experience higher rates of gambling related problems. So that, for us potentially at Mitchell, that wasn't something that we would be able to identify if we hadn't had this process already embedded. Another kind of key consideration for what we were able to achieve since using our app was we were able to feed back the EGM policy to things like the planning scheme. We were able to see that the policy itself needed to be a bit more robust. So it allowed us to be able to, objectively review the key actions out of the policy as well. And we were able to also embed some more gender neutral wording to be adopted in the policy, which was probably one of our bigger wins there. How can you get the app if you don't already have it? It's probably what everyone wants to know. But essentially, we have already shared this app with 67% of other local governments. So we're really quite proud of that. We've also got our app in a couple of local hospitals, including the Royal Women's Hospital, some water authorities, the TAC as well, have also just recently embedded our app. So again, we are quite happy and proud of those achievements so far. But essentially, if your organisation does use Power Apps, then you are able to use our Gender Impact Assessment app. So we do have a little bit of a kit that we share with councils and other entities that gives you an instruction how to, so that you can actually download the app into your own system, and it's fully customizable as well. So you can add all your own logos, your corporate colours, everything like that. We do just ask that Mitchell Shire is referenced there down the bottom. But other than that, please feel free to reach out to me or to Adele if you have any questions or would like to give it a go. Thank you. I'm going to now pass over to Shelley from Datascape, who's going to present on how Moorabool Shire streamlined their services.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tegan. And yes, coming from the vendor side, you can absolutely be forgiven for no live demos, always fraught with danger. So my name is Shelley Dover. I'm the account director for Datascape, and I've got Jessie online from Datacom also here joining me. So Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to just hear some of these amazing diverse projects that have been happening. And I'm always in awe and just inspired by local government in terms of the diversity of services that the sector offers. It's never dull, never a dull moment. Anyway, for those of you that don't know who Datascape is and Datacom, so Datacom is the company, Datascape is a product that we've built from the ground up specifically for local government, and it's software that will deal with all the business of councils. And so from the back end, some finance, property and rates, to the front end digital services for customers to engage directly with their council. And as Tegan, you said, thank you for introducing that we are going to be talking about Murable. That's one of our flagship customers in Victoria, who we've been working with really closely over the last sort of 5 to 6 years. And they have been really leading the charge. It's been such a pleasure to partner with them. And so what they've been doing is literally redefining the everyday with AI that is embedded in Datascape. So it's their story that we're going to focus on today. But just before we sort of dip right into the AI, it's important to talk about sort of the foundations that they set right from the onset. Firstly, that people were the highlight or the priority for them, not necessarily the systems that make it all happen. And it was important to them that we really laid the right foundations in terms of getting the data and the structure, etc., accessible for AI. Well, that obviously came about later. So, or the AI came about later, but they've had the solid foundations from which to build that upon. So we started working together just before COVID, which obviously added to the fun of implementing a wholesale enterprise system. But in hindsight, it actually turned out to be a great time to sort of kick off with a modernization platform. And that's exactly what they set out to do, modernize their council with a quick, clear principle from day one that it was people first and platform second. So you're about to hear directly from them as well. It's not all about, it's definitely not about us, it's about them. But talking about that foundation, they firstly replaced an unsupported rating system. And so finance, property and rates and CRM now sit under the one connected platform, which is Datascape. And then from there, they turn their attention to the community and that interaction that community have with them. And it was evident that the community wanted to be able to deal more digitally with them for obvious reasons, 24/7 access and more efficiency, etc. So the Datascape self-service portal enabled that form use, and their digital use has grown. So it's the community's digital use has grown tenfold in 3 years. And today, as much as 60% of their applications are actually received digitally. Then they added Antenna, which is a two-way app for community engagement. When they're out and about doing their everyday things, they can interact with council to request service requests, such as things that they've seen on their travels. And so it's a two-way. Murable can also interact with them. So it's Murable's consistent innovation and optimization of the digital services that really helped drive our AI journey, and in many ways they've led us. So let's hear it from them, their story from their own mouths. Thank you, Jessie.
Murable Shire Council were keen to get on board with the pilot group for AI in partnership with Datascape. Digital technologies is a real enabler to enhance service delivery to the community, as well as maximising resource efficiency. A lot of the processes that we've developed AI agents for sort of run that 5 to 10 minute range, and we're looking at reducing the time per task to about a minute. So there's enormous savings there. We've calculated it to be saving about 12 weeks of staff time per year. The project team from Datascape's been great. We have regular catch-ups where they show us new things. They're building it too, so they're excited about what they're developing and excited to help us deliver some benefit into our operations. They've devoted a lot of resources to us to help build AI agents. I think one of the important messages with our AI approach is that it's not there to replace people, it's to free up people so they can do more value-add work. So it's get on board with the technology, understand and appreciate how it works, and just accept that it's a tool. At the moment we have a fair bit of checking, so a user will enter it and then a senior officer will double check the work of the first person. Hopefully in time the AI agent will become that first person and it's just one other employee checking the work of the AI agent and making sure that it's right and letting it go. At the moment we're programming it to do repetitive tasks, but in the future we'll use it to do more analysis and gain insights from our data because our data will be within Datascape. One of the things that has surprised me in this early stage in the AI journey with Datascape is how eager my team is to get involved and get on board and build and suggest items that they think should be automated through these processes and suggest enhancements to some of the things that we're building.
There we go. So it was truly exciting and fun to make that series of videos with them, and they were very generous with their time. But as you can hear directly from James, their vision was about enabling and empowering their people to grow services, and it wasn't about sort of AI to replace people at all. It was about growing the community experience. And so, but what it has delivered is 300% time saving on rate notices processing, for example, and all in all about 12 weeks of staff time. And that's only just how they've started. We're doing more and more work with them, so we hope to update those stats into the future. But it's really quite game changing for them and for us. And and as I've said sort of at the beginning, it was after they were able to lay the foundations. You know, it wasn't just AI bolted onto the side. It was truly inbuilt and on solid foundations. So partnering with Burable has been an absolute privilege, and their ambition is actually the territory that we love to work in and partner in. And in James's own words, AI isn't there to replace people; it's here to set them free and do what we all do here, which is try and serve the community and deliver better services. So hopefully if this has sparked anything of interest or you'd like to know more, we'd love to talk to you. We are on the MAVlab panel for AI, so yeah, happy to work with you. Any questions? I know we're on tight time frame, so on that note, I'm going to hand to Tavis, who is from City of Boroondara, another one of our customers.
Thank you, Shelley. Pardon me, and thanks to all the presenters today for sharing your success stories. My name is Tav. I manage a small but mighty innovation team at City of Boroondara, and over the last 5 years, I've been trying to achieve the impossible, trying to make a large, traditional, bureaucratic organisation more innovative. Now, I won the MAVlab Young Leader Award last year. But it wasn't for running hackathons or open innovation challenges or for introducing pizza and table tennis and beanbags. It was for tackling the foundations of innovation, capability, and culture. So I believe innovation is a capability. It's a muscle that you can train and strengthen. I also believe it's a competitive advantage because it helps us stay relevant, resourceful, and proactive into the future. But I also believe it's a secret weapon. And the reason it's a secret is because most organizations don't understand it well enough. So when I started 5 years ago, innovation was a buzzword, a cliche. If it represented anything, it would be disappointment. The disappointment of promising ideas that went nowhere. So I started by redefining innovation for the organization. Now, people in the know will define innovation as change that adds value, which is true. But that's innovation, the outcome. So I needed more than that. I needed to define it as a capability and as a culture. So in terms of defining innovation capability, it's about having a clear, deliberate, and repeatable process for creating change that adds value. And culture is really about shared values, norms, and behaviors. So innovation culture is defined by 3 very specific behaviors. The first is about seeking out a variety of perspectives, views, and opinions. Number 2 is about falling in love with the problem and not the solution. And the third is about testing the assumptions that need to be true for any idea to work. So my task became crystal clear. Innovation capability is about having a repeatable process, and innovation culture is about encouraging the right behaviors. I started from the top. I had to demonstrate the innovation process by applying it to challenges that were set by my executives. So I asked ELT for strategic ambitions that were uncertain, ambiguous, complex, situations where there might not be an obvious solution, and in fact, there might be multiple solutions, and where creativity was going to be needed to figure out the way forward. So once I'd completed 3 innovation missions for ELT, I was able to prove to them that innovation was safe enough to teach to staff. So that's where I got working from the ground up. I created the Innovation Academy, which is innovation capability training for staff. Staff learn the innovation process by applying it in real life alongside their regular work, and they've got their directors and managers stitched in as project sponsors. So I've run the Academy 3 times over the last 3 years. We've trained over 50 people, and participants have included anyone from landscape architects to civil engineers, gardeners, youth workers, librarians, comm staff, arborists. It's really proof that anyone can innovate. And the impact has seen that Council now has a network of innovation champions. They know the innovation process and they actively demonstrate innovation behaviours. They've got lived experience of what it takes to innovate inside a large bureaucratic organisation, and they've built up muscle memory that will stay with them throughout their careers. For Council, they now have a wealth of people who are able to tackle complex challenges that would otherwise go unactioned. So I guess to wrap up, but the key takeaway is that if you want to unlock innovation as a superpower in your organisation, don't think of innovation as an outcome. Think of it in terms of capability and culture, and start embedding an innovation process and encouraging innovation behaviours. Thank you. So I believe I'm the final lightning talk, so I might hand it back to Gemma for potentially some Q&A for all of the presenters today.
Screen that. That was amazing. I applaud you all for being able to tell your stories in 5 minutes. That was incredibly rich, and there's a lot of kind of through lines and themes that were coming through there. A lot of people first, a lot of capability. I want to throw it to the people in the room, and I know we had 24 people on stage. That was awesome. Do you have any questions for our presenters? I've got one that I had for the amazing team at Brimbank and Maribyrnong about the complexities of collaborating between councils. So if we don't have any questions yet, and please have a think, I might throw it to Cassandra and Penny to shed some insights on that process and where you might have found some blocks or tensions or complexities.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. So the question you were asking was about complexities of 2 councils working together, and could this be a factor to potentially collaborate further with additional councils? I think we knew from the get-go that working jointly would mean that we'd have to take on the influence of the 2 council perspectives. So one way we worked on this was by allowing extra time during planning to have items checked by both councils where needing, like think about comms, marketing, etc. And we would also break work and tasks up, and one council would lead a certain item and then the other council would review, make amendments and approve, and we'd find a joint, a joint finished product there. As far as your question goes regarding the event extending beyond working with 2 local governments, I think an event focusing on young children and babies and extending it beyond the 50 families per session could be a stretch, and bringing in more councils into the mix may impact elements of the event. It could work, but some of the factors that would need to be considered were things like, are families gaining benefits from watering down local connections? Are neighbouring councils on the same traditional lands? Factoring in the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander identifying children in the municipalities, and by partnering, will that mean that people actually miss out, or will we need to run additional sessions? And another thing would be around like really practical things like accessing venues and taking transport factors as well as cultural safety factors into the mix as well.
Amazing answer. I'm seeing that across our 79 councils, everyone could maybe partner up though, you know, even two people working together, two councils working together, as opposed to every council doing it themselves.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
I think definitely. And what we see as well is our traditional owners are getting older. You know, they're stretched really thin, and resources can sometimes be stretched thin as well. The main factor is always going to be what traditional lands are you on. Penny and I, this was welcome baby to Wurundjeri country, but you know that could also be a big impact on that as well. Beyond the council, it's about protecting the elders and the traditional owners, and you know, at the time that they have to give as well.
I'm just checking in the chat if we've got any questions that have come up. Melanie, thank you so much. A question for Tavis. Which departments did you collaborate with across Boroondara to build the mindset? And how have you built momentum for this change?
Very good question. So yeah, I think we have almost touched upon every single department within the city of Boroondara. I think there are two still on our hit list. One is traffic and transport, and the other one escapes me just now. But yeah, we have touch points and people across the entire breadth and depth of the organisation, which has been no mean feat, and it has involved us specifically targeting areas that have tried to ignore us over the journey. Momentum, it's exactly like things like this. It's about sharing stories and successes, learnings, being able to demonstrate and normalize those innovation behaviors. That's the real secret sauce to keeping momentum.
I would observe that all of you are wonderful storytellers, and I think that as a skill to be able to tell really engaging stories about the work that you do is one of the ways you can build the impact of these programs. So well done. I'm thinking, Tegan, you gave a great example of how the GA app is now being used by a wide number of organizations. Sounds like my lot as well. One of those like really scalable solutions into organizations as well as councils. Vanessa, I'm curious if you've had any appetite from other councils, having seen the work, to scale this kind of approach into other councils as well, or organisations.
I think it's interesting when I talk to kind of CEOs and execs around the AI piece, and I think what's still emerging is, you know, where as a sector, local government kind of stands on AI. What are the parameters? What are the guardrails? But you know, everyone's already using it. So I think there's certainly from the CEOs that I speak to an appetite to continue to embed that across the organisation. But it's thinking about what's the best way to do that. It's interesting. We do a CEO index each year, and last year, as you would expect, was the first year we started to see the emergence of AI as one of the key opportunities for councils, but also one of the key challenges and how they'll navigate through those. We've got our index out at the moment, but I would anticipate that's going to come up even higher this year in terms of the prioritisation.
Great. I love the insights you have of all of our councils. It's very valuable for all of us on the call. Are there any other questions we've got? Oh, Reese, wonderful. I saw you put your hand up before. Keen to kick off innovation mindset at City of Greater Dandenong. So I'll reach out later. Tavis, of course. Tavis, have you had any people reach out wanting you to bring the academy into their councils?
Yeah, certainly been lots of interest, including internationally. We've had a council from New Zealand incredibly interested. Yeah, it's all about the innovation process that I mentioned, and the fact that it's repeatable means that it can be picked up and placed into any council. It's just a matter of setting up the environment whereby people are freely encouraged to try this new process for the first time. Knowing that they're not going to succeed first time necessarily, but they are going to build up that lived experience. That means that the next time they're trying to innovate a complex challenge, they're going to be better for it.
Incredible work. Melanie, thank you for your questions. Big shout out to Melanie. Do you want to come off chat and ask this question yourself? I'm curious.
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Thanks, Gemma. So I found the case study at the start about building the diversity of the leadership team at Dandenong really interesting. And I guess I'm just curious about sort of what ongoing change was embedded around recruitment and selection practices, I guess for all roles, you know, at Dandenong. and yeah, how that's tracking.
Yeah, so I guess we were already doing a lot of the processes that did do our best to embed that diversity and inclusion piece throughout it. I think this is probably one where there was some good takeaways for us about how we can continue to ensure that we really, I guess, don't get complacent with having that at every stage in the process. And it was probably one where there was a real opportunity at the beginning to challenge the brief and, work with Jackie on, we're potentially narrowing those PDs and requirements that are going to impact the opportunity to increase the diversity piece. It's always an interesting conversation talking with CEOs around looking outside of local government. I think for exec teams in particular, there continues to be some hesitation around looking for talent that may not come from the sector because of, I think, the complexity of the operating environment, and the councillor piece is quite unique, obviously. So I think, being able to use that as an opportunity to talk further with other organisations or councils around this has been the impact of looking for candidates who are outside a sector, which again presents the opportunity to increase talent pools from a gender and cultural diversity perspective, has been really effective. But I think what I've found, and I've done some further recruitment with Jackie at Dandenong since, is it continues to be a commitment of hers. So I recently did a manager of governance and legal, and again we ended up securing someone from an Iranian and Italian background for the position. But Jackie is absolutely mandated within the processes that we work with her. We always have our own diversity targets as well, but to have really strong diversity and representation across every shortlist. So I know that's something that she has ongoing conversations with her ELT on. But I think when you start to see the impact and performance and innovation that happens when you have that diverse ELT, I think that in itself creates that kind of story and I guess motivation and evidence for senior leaders and people sitting below that in the organisation to see the benefits realised by continuing to focus on that as a priority. Hopefully did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's fabulous. Yeah. Thanks.
I had a question for the Datascape team. I guess you were talking a lot about AI, and I love how you gave an instance of, a savings of several days or weeks or staff time. And I think with AI and with all of the products and solutions that are being developed, often it's a questions of value, like what are the metrics you're using to prove impact? And in council, we don't operate, we don't think about value just within the cycles of a councillor term or, an annual plan. We think about what are the long-term impacts? What is this going to build in terms of capability? And how is this going to change the way we operate? That's sometimes impact that's really difficult to measure. And I'm curious how you've maybe tried to tell stories of how the work that you're doing is going to have a longer impact when you're getting asked by councils, how much money is this going to save us? Or what's the impact on,
No, that's a really, really, really interesting question because, ROI can be measured in many, many different ways. It's not just about money. In fact, for local government, we're not all about money. It's about risk mitigation. It's about improvement of delivery of services, etc. So the metrics we put up there are actually from Maribyrnong. That's how they were measuring. We were guided by them on what they wanted to measure. As I said, they've really taken us on the journey. We've just provided the tools, but how we we'll frame it as the customer needs to and wants to, I think. Jessie, any added pearls of wisdom? That was my experience of them, working with them.
I think that's pretty bang on. The way that they did it was they looked at how long it might take to draft a certificate of land registry, for example, and maybe they called it 10 minutes, and they said that with AI and with the tools that we gave them, they could get that down to kind of 1 to 2 minutes. And then if they extrapolated that across their rate paying base, right, how many of those they had to process per annum, that was how they'd done the math, and that's how we've kind of represented that back. Just gone as factual as we possibly can in that space.
That makes perfect sense. I'm noting we're coming up to time. It's 1 minute. I kind of love to end sessions just before the next minute and acknowledge that seeing as we're in hybrid rooms, it sometimes takes a moment to jump to the next, to walk to the next, doing that. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to drop them in this chat that will be open for a little bit, and I can get the presenters to give us some answers, and we can send that around with the recording as we email you tomorrow. But thank you so much for joining us all for this mixtape session. real mix of perspectives and stories, and thank you to our presenters and acknowledging your incredible work in the local government sector. So thank you. And with that, I'll let you be off. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.